Remember back in elementary school when the math instructor would tell you to show your work? The timeline in Fusion shows everything that we did in the order that we did it. So it's a history of our actions. And so I'm going to go back in time and look at how I reverse engineered this part. So the sketch or the mesh was brought in and scaled to an appropriate size. Now I would have done this with just one scale. You can always edit feature, and if you need to change the scale, change it, and then moved it to the origin. Now after looking at this thing, I'm going to move it again because I don't think it's really where I would want it to be. But then the first thing I did then is create a sketch on one of the origin planes. So I picked a logical location for the origin to be at this bolt right here. And then I did some sketching to uh, get the uh, line across here and then the line across here, and I connected those two together. So this was an initial design attempt, trying to figure out how I wanted to do this. And then as I rotated around, though, I noticed that this line right here wasn't actually at the top of this feature because of that inclined plane. So if I go back here to this logic, so you see this line up here in this view, it looks like it's at the top and this one, but then when I rotate around, we see that it isn't, uh, we're looking at this edge right here. And so if I go into slice graphics, so I'm going to edit that sketch, and let's turn this back around to this orientation. I'm going to go to slice graphics. And so I added this coming down to here, and because this is a mesh and not perfect, I didn't come all the way down to the mesh, leave myself a little bit of clearance. But I also noticed then that this line wasn't at the top of that. So I want to make some changes to this. But anyway, you see how I brought this down so that it is uh, more or less at the top here. And I'd also like to bring this one down so it's at the top. But anyways, I continued on at at that at that stage. And so the next step then is I created a work plane through this line and to get it parallel to this. So if I edit that feature, and so then I just drag the angle to make it as best I could appear to be parallel to this scan surface. So the scan surface isn't, or mesh isn't perfect. So I did it as best I could to get it. And that'll give me a plane to sketch on. Let me turn on the visibility. So that plane right here going through that line and then rotated at an angle. And then I did a sketch down here. Now initially, let's go ahead and edit that sketch. And initially, I uh, put this in as a rectangle. And so I had this going straight up. But then as I did some adjustments later on, I decided to put this back here at an angle. And we'll look at that in a minute in further detail. Okay, so initially I just had it going straight up, this line. And then I'll go to the next step and turn on that sketch, and I sketched a rectangle up here. And again, initially I had this as a just a rectangle. This line was an angle. And then later on I decided to angle this line, and I tried to get this line more or less parallel to this edge right here. And so between this angled line and this angled line, what I was trying to do is to get where I could put a plane between this line and this line that would be as close as I could to the geometry without intersecting the geometry. So first I just I took the vertical or horizontal constraint off this line and just dragged it to approximate position. In the same way on this one, just dragged it to approximate position. And then I put in some logical dimensions to lock that into position once I thought I had it close to where I wanted. And of course, those dimensions that I put in can be edited. Then in the next step, I created a surface up here. So think about what sheet metal is. Sheet metal is just a uniform thickness of planes, cylinders, and cones. And then I did the same thing down here. Now, ideally, this line and this line would form a planar surface going across there, but I don't know what those angles would be in order to get that plane going from here to here. And so I created a 3-point plane going through a point here, and a point here. Now I did actually some experimenting, so you could do this point, and this one, this one, and that one. So there's several different possible planes that you could put in there. And so I put in the one that looked like it was closest to uh, being the best possible plane. And so once I had that, then I needed to extend this out. And see, this edge doesn't actually go perfectly through that plane because I picked this point and this point. These 2 points are, and this line are on this plane. But on this one, only this point is on that plane. So I needed to get this point on the plane as well. And so I extended it out, extended that surface out. Now I was pretty close, and I could adjust this dimension some more and get it closer with that dimension, but I'm not sure if there's a geometric way of determining exactly where you would have a plane that goes through here. And so it was easier just to extend that out and then trim off the excess. And so now I know that this point goes through the plane, this point goes through the plane, and then this one and this one, which I use to define the plane. I'll turn off the sketches. Actually, let's just hide the individual sketches. And so then I created a sketch on this plane, and I connected together these points. And so the key is, see, this is all planar. It has to be on a plane, not twisted. If it's twisted, sheet metal won't unfold it. And then I created a surface on that plane. Let's hide the sketch. Stitch those 3 planar surfaces together. Put in the inside bend radius, so that's usually the thickness of the material. This will be an outside bend, so that would be twice the thickness of the material. And so this is the way we used to make sheet metal parts before the sheet metal tools existed in Fusion. And sometimes we have to revert back to the first principles to get it. The tools won't do it for us automatically, so we revert to the first principles of planar faces with cylindrical bends or conical bends and uniform thickness. So if we revert to those principles, then we can still design a sheet metal part in a very basic way, and then convert it to sheet metal. Now, after looking at this, I decided, man, I should have moved this so that this plane was parallel, because this sheet metal part is up above that. So that's what I want to do next, is I want to go back and move this so that that is horizontal. So I consider my initial attempt just an effort to, or an exercise in understanding the geometry. And then once I understand the geometry a little better, then I'll make a second effort to try to improve the design. And sometimes I'll do a third or maybe even fourth or fifth effort. So don't be afraid to start over. Now, in this case, I don't think I'll have to start over from the beginning, right from the beginning. So I'm going to go back in time and do some adjustments to the original mesh import. So I'd like for it to be horizontal with this line right here. Now sometimes I'll go ahead and put in a sketch that I want to because this red line right here is pretty short. So let's go ahead and put in a sketch for that purpose. And I'm going to put a line across here. And then I'm going to do coincident between this line and the origin. Okay, and let's drag this out. So this will give me a reference then for horizontal. Now, this line, that sketch I just put in here occurs after the move. I need it for it to occur before the move. So I'm going to drag that line before the moves. So we move things in history. We have a time machine. I'm now going to edit this feature and I want to rotate this around. Now I want to make sure that we're rotating about the origin. So I'm going to do set pivot point and I'll select the origin 0, and then I need to, after selecting that, then I need to say done on this. This is the most commonly forgot step, is to select done after resetting the pivot point. And then I can rotate this around, and I'm trying to get that lined up. Now sometimes it isn't possible to line it just using a mouse. So went in, type in some fine numbers for fine tuning this. And then I want to move this up a little bit. I might want to reset this pivot because see, this is at an angle now. I can probably get it, but let's just go ahead and reset that just to show how that's done again. So I'll do set pivot. I'll select the origin, and now that's vertical. I'll have to say done, and now I can just move this up vertically. And I think that's pretty good right there. It's lined up pretty good. All right, I'll say okay to that. And then I'm going to go to the end of my timeline and see how everything looks now. Okay, so I might move this circle a little bit for the hole, or make it a little bit bigger to make sure I clear that bolt. But without the physical part in front of you, it's kind of hard to tell exactly where that's going to be. But everything else looks pretty good except for now this angle up here. And so that angle needs to be adjusted. And so I'm going to go back to that plane that I put in an angle. I'll right click and I'll say edit that construction plane. And let's look at this where we're looking directly at it. And it's a little bit hard to see here. I need to make sure that I have it visible as well. Let's rotate around. I'm trying to see that plane. I might need to move it up a little bit because it's kind of buried in my part a little bit. And let's move it up a little bit. So I'll say okay to that for now. And I'm going to go back to that first sketch. And actually, this is the one that I just made. I need to finish that sketch. And then I need to go to this sketch that we've done after the move. And let's rotate around here. And I'm going to do that slice graphics again. And so I see that line is down a little bit too far now. So let's do that, say 1.35. And maybe move it up a little bit more, let's say 325. And I like to allow a little bit of clearance, so let's do this 1.3. Okay, I might move it up a little bit more than that. Let's do 275. Okay, so I'm clearing the object there, and then I'll go back, and so then I still need to adjust that plane. And so let's look around here from this side, and I'll edit that plane. And now I can see it. It's a little bit hard to see. Hopefully that you can see it. And I'm going to rotate that a little bit more, try to get that parallel to this face. Let's see if we can see it better from the other side. Still hard to see. I should have moved it up a little bit more, and I could move it up above there, get it parallel, and then if I want to move it closer, I could move it back down, and then that might be easier to see that we've got it parallel. I think I've got it pretty good there. And so I'm going to say okay to that. And we'll look at it. And so now I've got this piece parallel to the top of the part. And we have this geometry down here parallel to the top of this part. The only concern I have now is the location of this hole. I might move that hole down a little bit, and that's easy enough to do. Just to edit the sketch dimensions uh, in the sketch that we use to locate that hole. And that should complete the part. So I think I've improved it a little bit from my initial design on my second attempt, but I didn't have to start over. But sometimes you'll just have to start over from scratch.